Hi, this is Anthony. Welcome back to my show. So, Kevin McCarthy is out as Speaker of the House of Representatives. Here are the first two paragraphs of the Wikipedia article about the events leading up to yesterday's removal of the Speaker. I think that it does a good job at summarizing what precipitated the move. On October 3rd, 2023, the United States House of Representatives removed Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House through a motion to vacate. This motion to vacate is the first time in American history that a Speaker of the House has been removed during a legislative term. The removal triggered an election to choose the next Speaker. In September 2023, Kevin McCarthy, a Republican representative from California who was elected Speaker of the United States House of Representatives on January 7th, passed a resolution to avert a government shutdown. He relied on most of his Republican members, but also support from members of the Democratic Party, the minority party in the House. The small Republican Freedom Caucus opposed any funding resolution that was supported by Democrats. Okay, now I'm returning to my own commentary at this point. Now, I've never been elected to any public office. However, if you're from Washington County in the state of Oregon, you probably know who I am and probably know that I've been appointed to perhaps more higher positions than any other non-elected person. I've been on the County Civil Service Commission. I've been on the county's Planning Commission. I've been on a county budget committee. I've been on another countywide budget committee that deals with the Soil and Water Conservation District. I've been on a budget committee for the state's largest special purpose district. I've also been on a $100 million bond committee for that park district. I've been the chairman of the county's Park and Rec board, as well as serving on many other county level and local level public boards and a couple nonprofits, where I again held high level positions within the leadership of those organizations. So, I have plenty of experience with working with other people from a wide variety of backgrounds and a wide variety of political points of view. And of course, besides my own experience where I'm sitting at the table able to discuss and vote on decisions, I sat through plenty of other meetings watching how they operate over the past 35 years or so. In many cases, after things have been thoroughly discussed, boards agree on things unanimously. Very often, there is only one realistic, rational course of action when all things are discussed, and those decisions can be pretty easy. Other times, discussions can get quite contentious, whether it's deciding upon a time to hold a meeting or what width the paved path should be in a park. You would think that that wouldn't be all that controversial, but the wider the path, the more trees in a heavily forested park would need to be removed, and people never want to see a single tree removed from a park, no matter how many trees there may be. Anyway, votes can get quite contentious, and on the levels of government where I've served, there wasn't ultimately all that much at stake. We were not deciding on funding a war. Nothing that we did could accidentally result in a nuclear annihilation of the Earth. No one's life or health really was affected by the outcome of any decision that any board that I was on ever made. And since all the boards that I were on were appointed ones, either by elected officials who appointed me, or in the case of nonprofits, the board of directors appointed me, I was there to be a participant bringing my background and knowledge. I wasn't there to represent a specific party or segment of the electorate. Now, obviously, elected officials who are elected as members of a party, and in the United States that almost always is the Republican or Democratic parties, electeds generally vote in a way that is in alignment with their party's platform and in alignment with the majority of the people who voted for them. And quite frankly, a lot of votes in the legislature at any level are bipartisan and often nearly unanimous. Things like proclaiming the third week of August as Natural Cactus Preservation and Rehabilitation Week may be something that nobody really cares about, but when they go to vote on it, they're not going to waste time opposing things like that. But of course, one of the most important functions of legislatures is to pass budgets. And when they pass budgets, they are budgets for the whole government, whether it's the federal government or a state government. But that budget affects everybody. Now, certainly, what is in the budget may affect people because there's more or less money for prenatal care or for repaving roads or things like that. But there's not one budget that affects Republicans and a different budget that affects Democrats. It's a budget that covers everybody. And we need to be cognizant that what is in the budget can divert a lot of money to people who are typically voters of one party or the other, and divert money away from people who might typically be on the other side of the political aisle. And let's stop here for a minute and think about the electorate. In the United States, we have what is called the first past the post system in general elections. Whoever gets the most votes wins. You don't need to get 50% plus one. If you have a three-way race, you can win the race with 34% of the vote when your two challengers each get 33% of the vote. That means you could win your House or Senate race with 66% of the people voting against you. Is this a good or a fair or an equitable system? Not necessarily, but that's irrelevant. That's our system, and until it's changed, that's what we have to work with. Now, put yourself in the place of somebody in Congress, in the House of Representatives, and a budget has been written, and you're voting on it. What if you only support 90% of it, and there's 10% of the budget that you think is being spent on unnecessary items or even morally objectionable spending? That could be money being spent on a border wall, or immigrant assistance, or for or against abortion services, or supporting or not supporting the conflict in Ukraine. It doesn't matter what it is, but you're not entirely happy with the budget. Do you vote against it? Do you utilize parliamentary maneuvers to stop the vote and potentially shut down the government? These things, and they're done by both Democrats and Republicans, may be legal maneuvers, but are they morally right? Are they on a practical level the type of things that should be done? I personally think that it's better to get something done good than holding out to try to get something done that's great, which will never happen. And this is what a lot of business consultants will tell you. Don't let great be the enemy of good. So, back to McCarthy. The Republican opposition to him was led by Matt Gaetz. And Gaetz found 7 other Republicans for a total of 8 Republicans voting to remove McCarthy, with all 208 Democrats voting to do so. So, these Freedom Caucus members would not support a budget that had bipartisan support, that is, support from Democrats, yet they used the support of the Democrats to oust McCarthy. Is that hypocrisy? I'll let you decide. Now, it's not surprising that the Democrats would vote against a Republican speaker, but in my opinion, it shows the political naivety and crassness of such a move. The reason that Gaetz and his supporters wanted to remove McCarthy is that he was not conservative enough in their minds, and because working on a bipartisan level with Democrats, they viewed that as betraying their extremely conservative values. And while McCarthy would, I'm sure, say that he was a conservative, he probably would be considered to be a fairly moderate Republican within the House of Representatives. And so the Democrats have likely lost the best partner that they could hope for in the House. Do they think that removing McCarthy is going to result in a more bipartisan speaker for them to work with? If they thought that would be the case again, it shows their lack of understanding of reality. It's cutting off your nose to spite your face. And in fact, McCarthy's temporary replacement, Representative Patrick McHenry of North Carolina, who has full authority over office space assignments, immediately notified former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, as well as Steny Hoyer, to vacate their Capitol office spaces within 24 hours. Personally, I think that the Democrats probably have shot themselves in the foot on this one. But let's look at the leader of this insurrection, Matt Gaetz. Gaetz is 41 years old, a lawyer, a Republican who was born in Hollywood, Florida. His father was a local politician and rose to be the president of the Florida Senate. His grandfather was also a politician in North Dakota. But unfortunately, Gaetz has some dirty laundry, and I thought that it was classy for McCarthy and his supporters to not bring it up, not to try to use it to derail the vote against McCarthy. Now, I'm going to skip over the accusations of witness intimidation and witness tampering and potentially illegal undermarket office rentals from a real estate developer and focus on the more sensational accusations. And these are largely taken from the Wikipedia article on Representative Gaetz. Driving offenses. In 2008, Gaetz was arrested for driving under the influence as he was driving back from a nightclub on Okaloosa Island, Florida. Police recorded him driving 48 miles per hour in a 35 miles per hour zone and noted that he showed physical signs of intoxication. Gaetz initially denied that he had drunk alcohol, but later admitted to drinking 2 beers. He failed an eye test twice, then declined field sobriety tests. After Gaetz was arrested, he refused to take a breathalyzer test. Shortly after Gaetz' case was referred to State Attorney Steve Meadows, Gaetz' driving license was reinstated, though Florida law requires a year's suspension when a driver refuses a breathalyzer test. Gaetz' suspension was less than a year long. His refusal also did not lead to criminal prosecution, during which it could have been used against him. A field officer for the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles declared that there was no evidence that Gaetz refused a breathalyzer test, despite the arresting police officer having documented it in an affidavit and the arrest report, and Gaetz' own attorney also having documented it. Gaetz' attorney also claimed that an unnamed witness who knew Gaetz observed no indication of impairment. The charges against Gaetz were dismissed. Federal investigations into sex trafficking. In January 2020, the United States Secret Service reportedly received a tip that in April 2018, Gaetz had accompanied Seminole County tax collector Joel Greenberg to a government office where Greenberg was producing fake IDs. Greenberg was indicted in August 2020 on an array of charges, including sex trafficking a 17-year-old girl in 2017 and creating fake IDs to facilitate sex trafficking. The investigation of Greenberg led federal officials to look into some of Gaetz' related activities. In late 2020, the Justice Department opened its investigation of Gaetz for allegedly sex trafficking the same 17-year-old girl in 2017, and whether he had violated federal sex trafficking laws by paying her to travel with him across state lines. As part of his plea bargain, Greenberg cooperated with the investigation of Gaetz and others. On March 30, 2021, Axios reported that Gaetz was seriously considering not seeking re-election and possibly leaving Congress early for a job at Newsmax. The same day, the New York Times reported the Justice Department's investigation of Gaetz. According to CNN, a person briefed on the matter said investigators also examined whether Gaetz used campaign money in his relationships with young women for travel and expenses, and whether cash and drugs were involved. By April 12th, the Justice Department was examining whether Gaetz asked women to recruit others for sex. According to 2021 reports, federal investigators were looking into Gaetz' September 2018 trip to the Bahamas. Gaetz was reportedly joined by marijuana entrepreneur and hand surgeon Jason Pirozzolo, who allegedly paid trip accommodations, traveling expenses, and escort services. Investigators were reportedly exploring whether the escorts were sexually trafficked for Gaetz and whether Gaetz accepted paid escorts in exchange for political access or legislative favors for Pirozzolo, who at the time chaired the board of the Medical Marijuana Physicians Association. Gaetz made 2 separate speeches for the organization while in Congress, and Pirozzolo gave 2 separate donations of $1,000 to Gaetz' campaign arm called Friends of Matt Gaetz in March 2016 and May 2017. A spokeswoman for Gaetz denied the new allegations. A woman on the Bahamas trip, a Capitol Hill intern who did not work in Gaetz' office but who was dating Gaetz, reportedly agreed in May 2021 to cooperate with investigators who believe she has information about Gaetz' financial transactions on the trip. Investigators believe that Greenberg met women through a website for sex and introduced them to Gaetz, who also had sex with them. Evidence, including mobile payment receipts, reportedly suggesting Gaetz had illegally exchanged money for sex, such as May 2018 Venmo transaction records showing Gaetz sending $900 with a memo referring to a woman to Greenberg, who then relayed the money with the memo's tuition and school to 3 women, one of whom was 18. Joseph Ellicott, an associate of both Gaetz and Greenberg, pleaded guilty in January 2022 to 2 charges related to this investigation and is also cooperating with authorities. Gaetz had argued in a November 2020 Fox News appearance that Trump, quote, should pardon Michael Flynn and everyone from himself to his administration officials to Joe Exotic. And for those of you like me who have already forgotten who Joe Exotic is, he's also known as the Tiger King. In late 2020, Greenberg apparently attempted to secure a pardon from the Trump administration via a confession letter, first reported by the Daily Beast in April 2021, writing that he and Gaetz had sex with a 17-year-old girl they believed was 19, and that payments had been made on behalf of Gaetz to her and other women in exchange for sex. Greenberg attempted to bribe Roger Stone with a $250,000 Bitcoin payment to secure a presidential pardon, texting Stone, "They know Gaetz paid me to pay the girls and that he and I both had sex with the girl who was underage." By the end of the Trump administration, Greenberg was under indictment. Investigators had been questioning some Gaetz associates, and federal agents had seized the phone of one of Gaetz's former girlfriends. Gaetz's phone was also seized, and he changed his phone number in late December. Defense and counterclaims of extortion. Denying any sexual relations with minors, Gaetz said on March 30th, 2021, that he did not plan to resign from the House. Also on March 30th, he tweeted that he and his family were victims of an organized criminal extortion involving a former Department of Justice official seeking $25 million. This allegedly began on March 16th with a text message to his father demanding money in exchange for making sex trafficking allegations, quote, go away. Gaetz and his father purportedly received communications claiming that the FBI had photographs of Gaetz engaged in a sexual orgy with underage prostitutes. The sender demanded millions of dollars to help secure the release of U.S. federal agent Robert Levinson, who had disappeared in Iran in 2007 and had already been presumed and declared dead, proposing that President Joe Biden would pardon Gaetz and as a reward for freeing Levinson. The sender was later identified as Florida developer Stephen Alford, who was arrested on August 31st. Gaetz said his attorneys contacted the FBI, which he said informed them that Gaetz was a subject, not a target of an investigation. He also said his father agreed to wear, quote, a wire to help the FBI record the alleged extortions. Gaetz sent Axios screenshots of text messages, emails, and documents outlining the alleged extortion scheme, which he asserted was being run by David McGee, a former federal prosecutor who had been a private attorney since 2005 and has represented the Levinson family. McGee's law firm called Gaetz's allegations, quote, completely, totally false, quote, and defamatory, telling the Daily Beast that Gaetz was attempting to distract from the sex trafficking investigation. Alford, who has previously been federally convicted of fraud and is represented by McGee, was federally indicted in August 2021 for allegedly conducting the scheme. Prosecutors allege that Alford claimed he had contacts in the Justice Department who could arrange for a presidential pardon for Gaetz and directed Don Gaetz to wire the money to a trust account managed by McGee. McGee reportedly met with Don Gaetz before Alford did, but apparently did not discuss a presidential pardon, which Alford later admitted to the FBI that he lied about his ability to arrange. Also on March 30th, Tucker Carlson interviewed Gaetz on Fox News. In addition to denying the allegations about his relationship with a 17-year-old girl, Gaetz denied a previously unreported claim that he had been photographed with child prostitutes and said that a friend of his, whom Carlson had supposedly met, had been urged by the FBI to claim Gaetz was involved in some pay-for-play scheme. He also argued that providing for flights and hotel rooms for people that you're dating who are of legal age is not a crime. Response and other developments. On March 31st, 2021, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said he had no plans to remove Gaetz from his seats on the Judiciary and Armed Services Committees, but that he might change his mind if Gaetz gets indicted or if it comes out to be true. On April 1st, 2021, CNN reported that Gaetz had shown pictures of naked women to colleagues on the House floor. Gaetz had allegedly claimed to have slept with the woman in the photos. The next day, his communications director, Luke Ball, and his legislative director, Devin Murphy, resigned. Both had begun working for Gaetz when he joined Congress in 2017. On April 6, 2021, the New York Times reported that in the last weeks of the Trump administration, Gaetz privately requested a blanket presidential pardon for himself and others, which was reportedly denied because it would set a bad precedent. The next day, Trump publicly denied that Gaetz had asked for a pardon. On April 8th, it was revealed that Trump had reportedly wanted to defend Gaetz, but was told to stand down due to the seriousness of the allegations. On April 8th, 2021, Gaetz's congressional office released a statement purportedly from his female employees vouching for his character, stating they uniformly reject these allegations as false. Gaetz's new communications director, Joel Valdez, told Forbes that all of the office's 8 female staffers signed it, but the version of the statement that was released did not have anyone's signature or identify any specific employee. That evening, Representative Adam Kinzinger tweeted that Gaetz should resign, becoming the first congressional Republican to make such a call. On April 9, 2021, the House Ethics Committee opened an investigation into allegations that Gaetz may have engaged in sexual misconduct and/or illicit drug use, shared inappropriate images or videos on the House floor, misused state identification records, converted campaign funds to personal use, and/or accepted a bribe, improper gratuity, or impermissible gift. The committee deferred its investigation at the request of the Justice Department, but resumed it in June 2023. In late April, Gaetz fundraised to run his own political ads, claimed that he was under attack by powerful interests such as big government, big tech, big business, big media, that perceived him as a political threat. A public relations firm hired by Gaetz issued a denial statement regarding the Daily Beast's reporting of Greenberg's correspondence implicating him and Gaetz. On May 17, 2021, Greenberg pleaded guilty to multiple crimes in a plea bargain in which he would have to cooperate with prosecutors. By June, the federal investigation had reportedly broadened to include obstruction of justice relating to a phone conversation Gaetz had with a witness. Later in June, ABC News reported that the investigation had engulfed many in the Central Florida political scene, and that prosecutors could decide whether to bring charges against Gaetz as early as July. In August, ABC News reported that Greenberg had provided investigators with years of Venmo and Cash App transactions and thousands of photos and videos, as well as access to personal social media accounts. These include September 2018 text messages between Greenberg and a woman engaging in prostitution, which indicate that a prostitute was arranged for Gaetz and that MDMA had been offered. A spokesman for Gaetz said, "Not one woman has come forward to accuse Representative Gaetz of wrongdoing, and that Gaetz had addressed the debunked allegations against him on his new podcast, Firebrand. According to Greenberg, he made the arrangements for Gaetz." 2 top Washington prosecutors, a public corruption investigator with an expertise in child exploitation crimes, and a leader of the public corruption unit, have worked on Gaetz's case since at least mid-2021. Greenberg's sentencing hearing was originally scheduled for August 2021, but due to his cooperation with related investigations, had been repeatedly delayed. In January 2022, an ex-girlfriend of Gaetz's testified before a grand jury after being granted immunity. She reportedly had information relevant to 2 of 3 criminal charges being considered for Gaetz: sex trafficking a minor and obstruction of justice. A year later, her attorney said the Justice Department prosecutors made the right decision not to charge Gaetz because, quote, they didn't have the evidence to prove a crime, unquote. Gaetz was also accused of violating the Mann Act, which prohibits sex trafficking across state lines. Later in January 2022, Joseph Ellicott confessed that in 2017 he witnessed Greenberg telling Gaetz over the phone that the woman they both had sex with was underage. On December 1st, 2022, thanks to his assistance with the prosecutors in a series of investigations, including those involving Gaetz, Greenberg was sentenced to 11 years in prison plus 10 years of supervised release. The sentencing judge, Gregory A. Presnell, said he has provided substantial cooperation to the government, more than I've seen in 22 years. Conclusion of Department of Justice investigation. A September 2022 Washington Post article reported that prosecutors have recommended not to charge Gaetz in the sex trafficking investigation, telling Justice Department superiors that a conviction is unlikely in part because of credibility questions about the 2 central witnesses. In February 2023, the Department of Justice communicated to the attorneys for Gaetz that they had concluded their investigation and would not be laying charges against him, effectively ending a multi-year probe including allegations of misconduct. Reopening of investigation by House Ethics Committee. In July 2023, it was reported that the House Ethics Committee had reopened the investigation into allegations about Gaetz' sexual misconduct, illicit drug use, and other misconduct that had initially started in 2021. The probe by the committee had been paused while the Department of Justice were carrying out investigations over allegations that he had sex with a minor. So, what's your opinion on this whole thing? Should McCarthy or his supporters or proxies in the House have tried to remind House members and the public at large of what seems to be multiple credible allegations of some pretty serious crimes that Gaetz has participated in, even if at this time the Department of Justice has opted not to pursue indictments? At least Gaetz didn't pull a fire alarm to delay congressional proceedings. Please do leave a comment. I love to hear from everybody, and please hit the subscribe button. I need less than 200 more subscribers to go before my channel gets monetized. And hopefully you'll check out my other videos, which I do on a wide variety of topics, from stock investing and personal finance to collecting old coins and banknotes, to looking at unsolved mysteries, cults, and interesting historical stories. And if you like any of those besides subscribing, be sure to hit the like button. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.